So welcome again, and today's topic is mindfulness in companies and how we bring mindfulness to employees, managers, leaders, and especially how do we stand out as teachers of evidence-based mindfulness approaches, being teachers of MBSR, MBCT, etc. So please don't hesitate to start if you have, especially if you have any personal experience, some good practices to share.
Yeah, maybe I can start if nobody else would like to start, and
Please.
I'm glad to. So I'm Roger, I'm working in Germany, and I'm trying to bring also mindfulness in companies. I do today MBSR trainings for private persons. That works quite fine. And I have done one in a company, and what I remarked is that the setting is slightly different. From the background, I believe that we all as MBSR teacher have the whole basics which is needed, but I think the setting is slightly different because sometimes the people are not so open like in a private session, and that's one thing. So I think this has to be taken in account. And the other thing, I think the exercises may be too long in the company context. So I see that people are ready to do maybe a 5 or 10 minute practice in the beginning, which extends over time. But it's hard to convince someone to sit half an hour or even an hour doing mindfulness practice. So this is my personal opinion. And as maybe another thing is sources where I got my information from is next to the MBSR teacher training. I have written the book of Rasmus Hugard on Potential Project. I think this is a very good book for a beginning for mindfulness in companies. And I also have visited a training from Search Inside Yourself. And I was not very convinced about the training method because it's very lot of information in very short time, and it is not it holds not long time. I think after 2 months I forgot more or less everything, which is not very good, and I would not recommend to do a similar setting. I think mindfulness, as we do it also as MBSR teacher, is the setting of 6 to 8 weeks is a very good thing. You cannot do this in a 2-day trainings and then just hook off and then you are mindful leader or whatever. And I think it's challenging and really looking forward to do more in companies. And yeah, it's curious to hear from you what sources you are using. Maybe in the company where I am now, there are 7,000 people, and I went also in the mindful training, which they offer to the employees. And this is also a very interesting setting because it goes also over 8 weeks. So yeah, so I have quite lots of experience in how trainings are done in different companies. I also visited one training in a university, which tried to do a self-service training, which was horrible. So I skipped off after 2 weeks. It was just horrible. And I also visited the working out loud. There's also a mindful session. And this is also from my feeling, I read all the documentation, not the right setting. So you leave the people to discover themselves mindfulness, and this is not really, it's like self-learning. Nobody knows how it works, but you exchange your experience with others, and this is not very good. So at least at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end, you should have some kind of a coach which observes what the people are doing. Otherwise, you leave them in an open space, and the risk that they say, "Oh, meditation is not my thing," is very high. Okay, so I was talking lots, and giving.
Roger, what is the program that you said used the company?
I used one from Rasmus Hugard, the Mindful Business, or 1 Second Behind, which is, I have the book here. I don't know if everyone knows the book, otherwise. So it's very good. So it's very structured for someone who has no good idea how to start. This is a very good beginning book. Not everything is good inside, but I think you can pick out some of the things, and I think it's definitely worthwhile to read that book. So in English, it's 1 second in advance or behind or something like that.
What I wanted to ask is, you said you are in an organization that also offers a mindfulness program. And what I wanted to ask is, which MBI is that?
That's not, it's based on Concordia, which is the company delivering the training. I didn't know the company before, so it's in Germany maybe known. I can post the link if it's interesting. Otherwise, you cannot find so many information, but the training is very good. So
is it evidence-based, mindfulness-based program?
Yeah, it's how we call that, gewaltfreie Kommunikation. Non-violent communication is in some parts inside. You have different things about the person itself, but it's not based on MBSR.
Okay.
But then it's another training, because the nonviolent communication is a very well documented training from Rosenberg.
Yeah. No, it's a mix of everything.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can find a lot of these things around these days. So, yeah. So I heard, I think at least 2 more, but I would probably point out 2 interesting items you mentioned. First is people are not so open in the companies, probably. So yeah, I think that this is something very common, and I think it's usually because of the the relationship within the companies, with when the groups are groups of people where you have like a manager and subordinates, or some people who are not very comfortable to work with. So this is one thing that we can often encounter. The other thing I heard, and this is the what really makes sense, how should the program be structured that it still makes sense. It's not too brief, not too short, not too easy. And how do we know that it really works, or are we really interested in that? Does it make sense for us? Yes, Daniela, yeah, just start talking, no problem. You don't have to raise your hand.
Yeah, I want to avoid that we all jump in the same time and then.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I can also share some experience. I worked at SAP, and I became first a mindfulness trainer, and then entered the mindfulness program at SAP, and then And I was teaching the mindfulness workplace training from Maria Gracier and Juliet Adams, which have stripped the 8 weeks into 6 weeks content from the MBS CT training and applied it to the workplace. And I also made lots of research to give some evidence that it's enough to practice 10 to 50 minutes a day, and you still have some effects to measure. So there are various programs. So I start with that, with Mindfulness in My Mind, and I entered the Search Inside Yourself program myself, and I'm living in Netherlands and joined it back to Germany, and I was really hesitating and wondering what they're doing. And I agree, you don't learn mindfulness in the basics as you do in 8-week program. You cannot compare that. Completely agree on this. You tip into it, and but you and I agree, it's a huge program in 2 days full time on classroom. You get a huge bunch of tools in mindfulness, but also in emotional intelligence and neurosciences. But I fell in love in this program because I was very surprised how open-heartedly I was with my colleagues in Germany, which are famous for a bit typical German, if you touch the cliches. That this was possible to join with my colleagues open-hearted mindful meditations and very open meetings. And the strong part of it is, I think, first of all, it's voluntary. So people choose for the program, they're on the waiting list. So this is, I think, very, very crucial in anything we do in company environment. So that it's not the discussion about convincing people, but because to feed people who are longing for it. I think this is what guides me in everything I do. It always should be voluntary. And the other thing is, afterwards we were body up. So we had a program of 4 weeks, and step by step in micro steps, we learned, we got exercises, practices to practice. This was a real basic mindfulness topic. So you learn step by step breathing techniques, you learn step by step focused attention, open mind, open meditations, you learn step by step the body scan, and all over 4 weeks, and we had to come back. And it's not the end. In my point of view, this is a kickoff. If you sell only 2 days, then you get loose. Lots of people like to sell stuff in training programs and go away. But the thing, it starts always the training, and then the challenge is how to bring it alive in the colleagues, with the employees in a peer-to-peer environment, in an informal way, how to get it living. And this was a fun part, because then I was able to practice formally with my colleagues in the company and during working time, and also this enabled me to share the language, to say, okay, I need not only a glass of water to refresh my body, but I also need a minute of silence to start a meeting and to refresh from one meeting, jumping to the next. So this was enabling us to share those practices openly and not closed in the toilet, to have a silent moment for myself and refresh my mind, So I have quite some, I felt really in love with the Search Inside Yourself program, but I'm also aware of that it's always depending on the company culture and the objective. Is it about well-being? Is it about leadership training? What is the main objective? What you want to bring into the company? What is the need, especially from the people? What do they need and what they're asking for? And then in this discussion start, which program makes sense. And there are other programs here in the Netherlands. We have Mindful to Work, which I also love. This is a 6-week program, and it's also evidence-based by Free University Amsterdam. And they include outdoor movements, outdoor relaxation, yoga, and then the classical mindfulness content. So there are a lot of these programs, and again, it should be voluntary, and it should be a kickoff for the rest of the working life. So that the mission is, in my point of view, the mission is to bring a new work culture into life, and this is mindful working.
Okay, so thank you, Daniela. So I understand you're also, like Roger, you're working like an insider in a
Oh, I left SAP because now it's on my mission to spread. Because I experienced myself that mindfulness working is possible, and I think it makes sense to bring it in other companies as well. So I'm just starting to build up my company.
Okay, well, we also can talk in terms of approaches, because there is this like classical approach that you are a mindfulness teacher or an agency, and then you offer a program to the company. So you come from the outside and you teach. Or there's like a newer approach with, let's say, sometimes called like a mindfulness ambassador, or yes, something like that. And you basically work with only a few people in the company, and then who take it seriously, and they take over like this role of the ambassador, and basically cultivate the mindful environment in the company from the bottom up, maybe with the help, with the coaching of the mindfulness teacher. So I wonder if you have some experience with that.
Breathworks has what it calls workplace champions.
Yes,
it's I think it's a 3-day training. I might be quoting, don't quote me on that. It might be longer than that. It might be 5 days. But basically it's not a training to teach, it's a training to lead meditation. And so it's really kind of trying to get in at the grassroots, get people interested in the practice first. So a bit like you're talking about with the ambassadors. Yeah. So there would be a group of people who would come together to learn how to lead meditation. Of course, there's some underpinnings, empirical underpinnings, etc., to that too. But then they would go off into their organization and really begin from there. And perhaps a more formal, recognized program might come in on the back of that, if because from that, I think, the circles grow, and so that it's kind of promoting an interest in people without requiring them to do any kind of formal course or any formal training first.
Yeah, actually, that's the idea. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I have to say, maybe a question for Daniela. I saw Peter Bostelman's TEDx talk, and I have to say I envied him for being already in a company that has such a great mindfulness culture, or at least such a special place for mindfulness in its organizational culture. How is the difference between that and going into, you said that the people came to that voluntarily, and Peter mentioned a few times that there is a very long waiting list. Getting from that to a new company that they never heard about mindfulness and they never knew what you want from them, must be very difficult. I have to say I am not yet a teacher. I'm not yet certified. I do mindfulness by myself for a few years now, and I'm on my way to having some courses and getting there, because I want to have mindfulness in my organizational culture, in my organization, and give the advantages of mindfulness to people, especially in such days like in the COVID. Maybe you have some I don't know, some do's and don'ts for someone that goes into a new organization with new people, that they don't have that eagerness to come and learn and hear about it, and they never saw the results of mindfulness on their colleagues. The question is, how can I get mindfulness in a new organization? What are the tools?
So if I got you right, you're asking how to convince in sales the idea of mindfulness. Is that right?
Yes, in a new organization, not like in SAP, but in an organization that they know nothing about mindfulness.
Yeah. I think it all starts with the customer. So I've been busy as a customer success manager many years. So it all starts with what's the business. So what's the business about? What's the business pain? And then you can explore together with your contact where's the pain, and where the pain is, there's energy, there's attention, and from there you start. So if, for example, in these days, a lot of hospitals suffer from long-term leave, some of the people are in overload with the COVID stories. So there's the pain. The people fall apart. They are not. It costs lots of money and disturbs all the procedures. So so in this point of view, you start a discussion. Why not think about mindfulness, which help? It doesn't solve the issue of lack of number of employees. To be honest, this is a different discussion, but which teach the people to live with the suffering, so or to deal with the suffering. So it always starts with the business pain, and then therefore you need first to understand the business, the core business processes, and then you can go into details. Or you are in there are many different cases, and also with very different cultures. If you go to a bank, they are working completely structured and rule-based, and they have the calendar-based, all the stuff. So it's a different working culture and different needs. So then you look in their needs. Okay, then you have clear policies, for example, it's complete policy driven. So okay, what's your policy on mindfulness? How you and then you go into discussion on what makes sense. So this is I think in a company which is not employee centric, because if you have a company who is already aware of and willing to invest in their people because they are their human capital and drive their business like SAP does, they invest consciously in the people's wellness and effectiveness and creativity and innovative. Not every company does this. Some companies have this, okay, we have employees, we take them, if they don't perform, we smash them away, as an American principle. This is a different approach. So if you have also distinguished, it's easier to start with companies who are employee-centric. So they are already aware of their capital on humans and that they have to safeguard and maintain and bring attention to them, and then also invest in them. If this way of thinking is not established yet, then it's a really hard story. Then you go. Then you have to discuss figures and have to build business cases.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I also completely agree on what Daniela is telling. So we started, so we are not so long in business with mindfulness as SAP. I'm working for Deso, which is also a consulting company, and is of course also very based on the people. So it's also a great place to work, certified. But I think the story, how it came to mindfulness, is from inside out. So somebody in the team told we would like to do something with mindfulness, and presented it to the upper management and got approval. Yes, we can try to do it because maybe it's worthwhile for our people. And then an external company came in to play, and then the first step was how do we sell it internally? And from the beginning on, it was very clear that you cannot sell it for people having stress. So you have another wording. So they called it how to work in complexity. And this was always under the cover, how to work under complexity, and not you have a problem, you cannot deal with stress. So this is the first important thing. If you're going to go to the company and say, who is stressed, then you will not have any people attending your seminar. And even if everyone needs it, nobody will tell you he's stressed. And so then they made some kind of internal marketing, which only sent out with mails a photo where mind was marked on and some sentence to mind. And nobody in the company was aware what is this. And then they had some interviews with doctors and people from the outside which have experience with mindfulness, and then in context with the company. And then they started a program in last November. And yes, and since then they offering the training internally, but they don't have any figures how many people visit this training. So yeah, maybe this is one of my next steps to do more. I see my role more as an MBSR teacher, as someone which can maybe help afterwards to create sustainability and offer then in rooms or in whatever sessions for people working with me together or in other parts of the organization. So there I see an important step, but this is still in development. Everything is still just growing, so it's in the beginning compared to SAP. But I loved what Daniela told, that it's something which is you have to keep on going. It's not something you do in 2 weeks. You can maybe make an initial workshop, and search inside yourself is just maybe these 2 days, but this is then not the full story. So what you really need is to keep on. It's like fitness. You need something always going on. You have to feed the people with new information and let them grow with mindfulness, from my view.
I would have a question to Daniela. I didn't quite get, did you say the length of the practice 10 to 5 or 10 to 15 minutes?
If you have questions regarding to Search Inside Yourself program, then it starts with a minute a day and increase up to 15 minutes at the end of 4 weeks. In the program of Mindful Leadership for Dummies, developed from Juliet Adams and Marine Gracier, they have daily practices from 10 to 15 minutes. Then you have Mindful to Work by the Dutch people. They have a 7-week program and daily practice by 15 to 20 minutes a day. So they are all coming, the roots, the last two are rooted in MBSR, MBCT. And Search Inside Yourself is slightly different because it's also about emotional intelligence based on Daniel Goleman's framework.
The Dutch program was called Mindful to Work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've put it in the chat. So the link is in the chat.
Yeah, there is one already. I didn't know whether it would be the right one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is really useful stuff. Maybe just, I'm also not a mindfulness trainer yet. I'm in training and I'm starting my practicum next year. So I'm exploring ways where I should approach and where I could maybe land something in there. I'm thinking about schools, and I really like what Daniela said, that it always is important to understand what is the pain, right? And the pain in the schools is that they don't have enough teachers. They are off sick a lot, you know, and it's a very stressful environment, as you can imagine. Maybe just on the pain, I mean, the idea I had when you were talking, Daniela, is also whom do I talk to in the company? And that depends on the maturity of the company as well, right? I have worked for Microsoft before, and they are really maybe along SAP also quite far ahead in, you know, understanding the human capital of their employees. And the CEO, he's mentioning compassion as something very important, not only among the employees, but also towards the clients. And maybe something helpful for you guys is if you look for titles in companies, maybe if you use tools like LinkedIn, like Chief Wellbeing Officer or Digital Wellbeing Officer, this sometimes can be an indication that an organization is quite advanced, and you might want to talk to those kind of people. Just my 2 cents.
When you said about working with schools, Thomas, you meant the staff or the children, the pupils?
I want to focus on the teachers first, because it will have an implication on the children as well. I mean, there are programs for the children, but what I want to do is really like a mindfulness introduction course first. So I think it is important you start with the teachers themselves, because if they are not mindful, then it's not going to work in the end, right? And then as a next step, maybe you do like a 6 to 8 week program, and afterwards you can teach them how they develop more mindfulness, not only for themselves, but in the classroom afterwards and for the pupils, and using exercises there. That's my current thinking.
I wish you luck.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. I think this is perfectly in line in one of our previous sessions here on mindfulness for kids. And actually, the special guest whom we had, she's a teacher of mindfulness for kids, and she basically had the same impression. He actually left this teaching of kids because she found that unless the teachers and the parents are on board, this is really too hard for her to do that job.
And I recently came across a very internationally well-known organization who have a director of mindfulness programs. And I got interested in how this person got to have this work title and such an enviable position within a company, and made some inquiries both of him directly and looking at his profile, etc., and discovered that he had no formal mindfulness teacher training whatsoever. This came as somewhat of a shock to me. Although I've since discovered that other people who are holding similar positions, because this sort of piqued my interest just a little, I've discovered that since then there are various people in various similar, well-known, internationally well-known organizations who are moving towards having either someone in a similar position who are again appointed without having had any formal mindfulness teacher training. And I just wondered what people here think of that.
I once had a client in an 8-week course. She wrote a book about mindfulness that you could buy at every airport, and she wouldn't have had any experience in mindfulness. That was really shocking for me.
Yes, I think we can find not only internal mindfulness managers, but also many teaching agencies who are teaching mindfulness, like today's masses, and without any formal, even exposure to mindfulness. Not speaking about training, formal training.
I work as a psychologist, and I am a yoga teacher, also a mindfulness teacher, compassion teacher, and breathworks teacher. And I met some of my colleagues, my fellow psychologist colleagues, who said, "Oh, but I read the book of Jon Kabat-Zinn, so I can do a training." And then I am like, whoa, there is more to it than just read a book and go sit with your clients. You really have to know the practice and to embody it. And I think this is very shocking, but I also think you cannot prevent this from happening. There will always be people who read a book and who think, okay, I can do that. And they are just going to do it. I think you can only get some registration and accreditations, and then go along with that. But there will always be people who just go on and do things.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I think that's the general picture now everywhere, and that was also what I mentioned in the beginning. So what do we bring to the table? How do we stand out like trained teachers? What can we offer? Is there anything actually we can do to
I would like to take this question to take these questions to another place. If I get that most of the people here are accredited, are teachers. What, in your opinion, are the minimal requirements for, as Rennie mentioned, for having such a position in a company? Doesn't matter if it's small or large, but for me, for example, to be able to go to the HR and say, listen, I want to be your next chief well-being officer or chief mindfulness officer. What do I need to bring to the table, as you say? What do you think?
At least you should practice regularly. That's for one, and maybe did some courses. I don't think you especially have to be a mindfulness trainer teacher, but at least you should have your own practice. If this is in mindfulness or in the Zen tradition or Vipassana or Tibetan Buddhism, but you should have some practice on your own regularly.
I would like to come back to this question, what we bring to the table, and like when we talk to HR, it won't probably be of much help when we tell how much practice we did for how many years. But I think what we really bring to the table, and usually, like, I've never did cold acquisition. I was asked several times by companies to do a training, usually via a client of mine who took part in an 8-week course, and then she said, "Oh, I think it's a good idea. We should bring that to our company." And then what we can bring to the table as trained and experienced mindfulness teachers is the trust and the confidence that this really makes sense and that this works, and we bring it as a living person. And some people pick it up in a training and some don't.
Yes, that embodiment is incredibly important. However, it's really hard to put down on a proposal to an HR department embodiment. Nobody will understand.
That's what I say. I never did cold acquisition. I was always asked. And then, but then even if you sit in front of 10 or 15 new people, you have to have the confidence that this works and makes sense.
So there was it Katharina also raising hand? No.
Yeah, but Daniela, you go first, and I go after.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. So I think what we can distinguish as certified MBSR teachers is the access to sciences. I think this makes a lot of sense in bringing into the business world to say, okay, if you talk to me, we talk about science, evidence-based. So also bring the papers which are relevant. I think this is very important to distinguish and to make the people we collaborate with aware of their differentiators. Because mindfulness itself can be very vague, and people who have mindfulness as a hobby, which is brilliant, and they have also an added value because they do the things and encourage people and motivate people. So this is a good start. And then to distinguish and to add added value is to say, okay, we have sciences. We can talk science evidence. And this is what we learned. And then this is already, there's something. They might not understand, they may not interested in it. Nevertheless, you bring it on the table. The other thing is we have access to assessments, and they are personal in the first instance. But you could do some surveys anonymized and to see the before-after situation. So you have figures. This is also an opportunity to distinguish you from awake, mindfulness, feel-good environment, which is brilliant. Embodiment is marvelous. And this is the basis I also agree on. Embodiment is what we can spread. But in business talk, it's not measurable, not feasible, not really tangible. You cannot, touch it. And this is not, this is what we already have in house. So this is what you already have in the suitcase. And what there was something else. Oh yeah, good to know is that Ute Hulsheger in University Maastricht has developed a mindfulness assessment scale. It's on my to-do list to ask her to send it and share it. Maybe we can invite her. She is specialized in research and mindfulness at the workplace. So, and this year she published the assessment, which is the language of the workplace and assessing mindfulness traits and skills. And this is maybe the opportunity to test this.
Wonderful. I would like the link to her if it's possible.
I have to look up her paper. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Daniela. Katharina?
Adding to Daniela, I think there are, and to Winnie, I think there are various types of embodiment. And as Daniela said, or Winnie said, if you go to a company and you tell them how much you practice, that is not the culture that wants to know about that kind of embodiment. But I do think that we need it. Because we need it, because we are claiming that we are professional people transmitting mindfulness practice. And then, other than that, I would rather talk for myself than make a generalization of what we need. I also think that when I go to an organization, I need the embodiment that I know organizations from the inside out. I've been working in organizations for several decades. And so I know what is happening in businesses. And whenever I work with a new organization, I typically have a very broad interviewing to get a taste of what the company or organization culture is. I want to understand what is going on, not only from one perspective. And then the third aspect of embodiment is what you mentioned, Daniela, is that to prove that we are working evidence-based, we must know the relevant science for the particular culture. So, for example, if I go to an advertising company, I need some research that's been done, for example, by Ellen Langer or people that I've been following in her footsteps, and I use that. So I very often keep myself inspired by what John Kabat-Zinn said, to contextualize our transmission to the people that we are working with. And as an anthropologist, I call that culturalizing the transmission to the organization culture that I'm working with. So these three aspects, the embodiment of the own practice and to be compliant with our professional ethics within our community of being trained and keep up our own training. Second, I think I need my embodiment as being relatively marinated in company cultures. And then third, needing the research that is relevant to that particular context. And for example, Roger, is that the name, how you spell your name? Roger or Roger? Yeah.
Completely. Roger or Roger is
yes.
Both is okay because I'm Swiss, so it's Roger in Switzerland, and Roger is my mother is from England.
One thing that I am, how companies find me, because like Christian, I do not do any cold acquisition, but use the stepping stones that people find. And they find me because I offer what I call mind fitness. And I can use that because an American company went bankrupt that had this name. So it might not be a good omen, but I can use that. And people in companies like it. They like it, fitness, and I draw very many comparisons to physical fitness, to nutritional fitness, to psychological, emotional fitness. So that is a word that sticks better than mindfulness. Also, very often people confuse it with a mindful with double L. So for me, it works better to work with mind fitness.
Yes.
Thank you. And I think Nancy was trying to say something, no, before.
Yeah, I was thinking companies, they want figures, just like Katharina said, and you have to feel the atmosphere and talk the same language. That's so important.
Yeah, thank you.
That language changes from company to company and from industry to industry. So every time we must practice what we preach, connecting really to that present moment with that present group.
Yes.
Maybe I think what is also important is that you have to understand what problem you want to solve at the customer side. And it's not about what you want to do, it's about what the company is ready to do. And sometimes you then have to say, no, this is not my mission. I cannot do this, because some just tell you, okay, make a 2-day workshop and then we have mindfulness done. I think this is just not right. Doesn't give me a good feeling. And I would say, no, I will not do that. So it must be something sustainable and which goes on. So we have to make very clear that the 8-week MBSR training is also a basis for companies. Because if you try to do it in a shorter time, you risk that people say, okay, it was quite nice, but I didn't get a lot out of it. And I think that's why you have to know what you want to sell, and you have to have the upper management committed to this. If you just try to do mindfulness in a company and all other hierarchies are against you, then it will be very hard to get the right awareness, because not everyone pulling on the same rope. And it's important to know what people do you have to have in the boat if you want to really do a good training.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Thomas?
Maybe
I'll ask a question into the round. Oh, you go on, Roger.
Yeah, just one thing about the research results, which may be helpful to bring into a discussion with a customer. I think this is also different if you selling a training to a private person, then the evidence-based things or the results from university is not so important. It's maybe good to know, but if you go to company, you need figures and facts, and then it's good to know what source do you want to take into that discussion. And in my EAMBA training, we had some information from Ulrich Ott, which is a researcher for mindfulness, and this was quite helpful. But actually, you need really a big deep dive to find the right results, which you feel comfortable to sell to your customers. Doesn't make sense just to take any university research and don't understand it yourself what they have done exactly. This is a kind of a risk, and maybe this is also something which I would say would be nice in a community, that we have a common understanding what research are really helpful and what research are maybe less helpful if you really want to bring it into the companies.
Thanks, Roger. I was thinking about teams, teams in companies who are being asked to work together, newly formed teams, or maybe teams there where there are a lot of tensions, and they could benefit from mindfulness awareness and these kind of things, right? Do you have any experiences in having worked with in that area, or approaches you can share?
I think what Daniela told in the beginning, it's a free thing. So you have to have the people which really want to attend. If you have a team which is not working, which is not performing, which have fights between each other, I think you need a mentor or someone make the first step to calm the water. Otherwise, just sending all of them to a mindfulness training will not give you the result you would expect. And I think good coaching in the beginning would be more helpful than just sending them to mindfulness training. Maybe some of them will profit of it, but others will work against it because they know the other love it, so they have to be against it. And so I think it could be challenging.
Makes sense.
Maybe Daniela has more experience in this area.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. Yeah, doesn't fix team issues in this. I completely agree, and still safeguarding the voluntary aspect. I did team events, but I emphasized then brought the workshops for with mindfulness in the SRP. But then I always said it is a requirement that people have a dropout option to safeguard the voluntary. And the other thing is, if the statistics Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute collected from the program, when they look into the data of teams, the impact seems even higher than, but it's statistics, it's not scientific based, it's no control group, nothing, but at least first indications that teams much more benefit from the experience in this Search Inside Yourself program or the mindfulness-based emotion intelligence program. So there's some indication that team can benefit from it, but still first is voluntary, and then carefully think about how to drop out. And I think it's also important to highlight in companies. Normally we said an SRP, you can only the people are healthy. So we assume people are healthy who are joining the program for the Search Inside Yourself program, and just mention where they can go in case of mental issues. And there's normally in companies they have also a first line support or something else for mental issues. So to highlight it in this context is also very important to have the exit for any trauma sensitive stuff or what else comes up. We may not forget this, because some programs have no intake, like MBSR, and you miss this opportunity. Or even for the keyword for the workshops, then it's also you never know. So some little bit safeguarding.
And maybe to add to what you said, Daniela, about maybe Search Inside being more fitted. In my experience for team conflicts, Rosenberg training nonviolent communication is rather fitted, and many many people in HR know the programs. So these trainings, they really address in a very informed way team conflicts. So I would, if I were to choose, I would rather do that and maybe prepare the team to take a mindfulness training afterwards if they are interested in going deeper. And I just wanted to add something that, Roger, you said you really must be informed on what you sell or on the problem you're solving. That's quite a double-sided sword. And I learned the hard way not to promise to solve any problem, but to offer options that could contribute and not to promise a result. For example, companies, organizations very often want to lower their sick leave ratios, especially long leave, and dropout of recent hires. And I had myself once seduced in promising that that would drop. And well, of course, after an 8-week course, you can't see statistics drop. So it's very dangerous to have this one remedy that will cure any ailment. And with regard to what you said about measuring, I've been using for years the 5-facet questionnaire, which is very short, and people actually like it because then they keep it, they compare it later, and it appeals to the fact that in companies people like to see numbers, measurements, and differences from one to the next measurement situation. So I also think that that is helpful.
Yeah,
I have
maybe
an interesting thing to bring to the table. In my teacher training, there was a police officer, and he practiced with his colleagues. And when there were more colleagues who were in this training and practicing mindfulness, it was more calmly at the cell block where everybody was kept until they have to go to court. So I want to share that, and I have to leave because I have to be on 8 o'clock. I have to go to another meeting. So I hope it was a pleasure. I hope to see you again, and thank you. Bye.
Nancy, before you leave,
Yeah.
we will have a meeting with Michael Kelson in the new year. And he's doing a lot of work on mindfulness in companies.
Okay,
So
I will see, because I have a very busy schedule. I have to skip sometimes, and yeah, so but have a very good exchange, and I hope to see you again.
So we are basically running out of time, so you are welcome to stay and discuss, everyone. So yeah, Daniela?
I have to leave. Goodbye. I have to teach.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you. Sorry, I could not get my camera working.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
Yeah. Just a note to one thing Roger was saying. I don't believe that it's such a bad thing to have like a presentation or half a day or 1 day or 2 day seminar. I think I regard it as a foot in the door. So it really depends on the content, and either you sell it as a full-fledged mindfulness course that changes everything, or you just use it to open the eyes and just show people that, you know, they just taste something that they could, like a journey they could start later.
Yeah, no, this was maybe a misunderstanding. So I also do, of course, first 2 hours presentation what's about mindfulness, because it's just to give the people the information what's it all about, and then they can decide if they want to have more or less. So I have a quite modular building. So the first block is always an impulse presentation, and who's interested will do more, and that is always the first step. Maybe also what Katharina told, what problem you want to solve is just more what problem is in the company. You have to understand the problem of the company. If they are suffering because lots of people are leaving the company, if they are suffering because everyone is sick, or what exactly is the problem? Why would they like to do mindfulness? And from there on, then forming the need. Maybe that's what I want to tell about understanding the problem. I cannot give a guarantee to solve a problem, but you have to understand the problem. And this is not always the same. Some just want to get more out of the people, and then you have to tell them this is not the right way. Maybe you have to rethink your value add you want to give to the employees.
And also we shouldn't forget about compassion or kindness programs that also are around in companies with good results. And also there is research on that. Also in the context of teams, for example, or customer care or whatever. So Christian, we're trying to also to contribute something just a while ago? No.
Yeah, a while ago, but that's a while ago. Thanks.
Okay.
Maybe yes. Like I'm very I admire all the profound knowledge that is collected in the science and so on, and I like to read and study many different lines of this science. I think it's really interesting, and of course there will be evaluations, what program works, how, in what company, and so on. And this is really interesting. The languaging, of course, is also very interesting. Before I was starting as a mindfulness trainer, I was working 30 years as a national economist. So of course, languaging is important. But what I wanted to say, and maybe I'm burning my mouth here, is that I think that mindfulness in its core, as it is conveyed in the 8-week program, is a very robust thing. Is a very robust thing, and every time I was allowed to teach an 8-week program in an institution or a company, there was some result. So this is why I said, like, what I can offer is the confidence that something will happen when you follow the program. That in my opinion, in my belief, in my experience, it is something very robust. If you bring people to practice and you follow a useful curriculum like MBSR, or maybe you can make a little adaptation. Maybe you can shorten a practice, but things will happen. Like it's not. So that's just one thing I wanted to say. Of course, we have to be precise and all.
So yeah. So you are talking about like a adjusted MBSR, or taking the structure of the MBSR basically and adapting it to the environment. But Also, I remember your remark on that you basically do only, you don't do acquisitions because you are always asked. But it's a big difference if you are only asked to do it, or if you do acquisitions, because if you are asked, you usually have much more room to maneuver and to basically do it the right way, as we know it, like the way it works. But I've encountered companies that really insisted on very short interventions, very brief practices, and it didn't work every time, actually.
Right. I felt like cheating once. I was asked by insurance to abbreviate the body scan, and I felt like cheating, offering a 22-minute body scan. It's true, and as Roger says, we must not dilute it too readily to meet the needs of or the yearnings of the people that run the company. Like it only stays robust so far as we stick to what we know.
Yeah, actually, it's quite a thin ice to negotiate this, because is it like, what is it a real need? If it's the concern is only it to be brief, is it the real need? Like, does it do any good to anyone? Right. So, yeah.
I offer after the 8, and sometimes it's 10 weeks, because I want to do all the parts of the 8-week program. And sometimes there is not enough time to do that in 8 weeks. So sometimes it's 10 weeks. But then I offer monthly refreshers. And in those refreshers, all the different practices come back. And then I tell people to play with it. And play with it in length, maybe make it longer, make it shorter, maybe do a standing body scan, a walking body scan. And I have learned that what you say, Christian, something happens, that the people who come to the refreshers, of course, something has happened with them in the first 8 weeks or the first 10 weeks, but they make they come to their own real tipping point due to adding the playfulness and having the freedom and like this coping exercise that we have, that is actually a DNA for all mindfulness practices, while at the same time you can do it in one turnaround or while you walk to a meeting. And people really like to have some short practices in order to do coping or to prepare for something, to call a client or meet a manager or go to a meeting. So after the full program, I actually don't mind that they play with it to make it shorter or whatever they need.
I love that wording, play with the practice after you have some foundation. It's wonderful.
You can include mindfulness in schools, or the .b.
Yeah. I learned also some of this from an expression in a book of Tara Brach, where she mentioned her own experience that during a particular time in her life, she had great difficulties of practicing. And so what she would do is, at the end of the day, she would sit at the edge of her bed, invite one out breath, one in breath, and then tell herself, I did it. Because instead of telling ourselves, oh, I skipped it again, and coming into an automatic belief, oh, I'm skipping, having that consistency, even if I didn't do the full catastrophe, I was attentive to one out breath and one in breath. And I always give that example to my participants because it has helped me. It even helped a great meditation teacher. So why not all of us? So also an act of compassion.
And maybe one hint also from my side. So on my website, I put the long meditation, the short meditation on the same page. So if I give an 8-week EAMBA course, I tell the people, you can use the long meditations, which is the exercises we need normally for the EAMBA course. But if you have not the time, maybe try also one of the short one. And for my business seminars, I make it the other way around. I say these are the short meditations, but if you have maybe one day the idea to use a long meditation, just do it. And my experience is that if you don't tell the people what they have to do, maybe they will try the one or the other, and that will motivate them to do something, short or the long meditation. And it's the freedom then. And the experience is anyway that people starting with short meditations in business end up doing long meditations later on automatically.
Yeah. I really like this approach of being playful and also of mixing short and long practices. Just my question is, do short practices help from the beginning, like, or do we need to get over a threshold to kind of tap into the use of short practices? I don't know. I always started with long practices.
My experience is that it's really individual. And I have some people who really say like this, you know, that there's this 50-50 practice or 50-50 attention in MBCT. And, well, it could be long or short or, you know, anytime. And some people say, oh, like this is the best I learned in the program. Like it's working for me. It's changed many things in my work or my life. And yeah, and others don't say that, and they probably are more for the longer practices work probably better for them. But this is not really studied, I think, in detail yet.
I think according to the podcasts I'm listening to, which you know, has doctors talking about the evidence, the consensus is that like a 10 minutes per day already shows some results, but it's not a hard fact. And I'd like to come back to what Katharina said earlier, that you can make the analogy to sports and fitness and physical exercise, right? I mean, if you want to see some results, you need to do something for it, right? And if you just go jogging for 2 minutes, it might not be enough. Even though when you do the 2 minutes exercise, again, there with the one in-breath and out-breath, you're already in your jogging shoes. You might as well go for 15 minutes or do another breathing, you know? So I think it is a good advice and very inspiring. Thanks for sharing that.
And sometimes it happens because that one rep can give you the motivation. Oh, I can do another. And then before you know it, you get into another minute and another. There is a book on this, which explains the total process of being compassionate with oneself and just having very small steps and gliding into a more elaborate practice.
Yeah,
I think it's the one rep habit or something like that. I will look it up.
What's similar to this is this 1 second meditation, isn't it? Like it's the same. It's to sit for 1 second, and then you probably, if you sit down, then you stay longer.
Yeah, about self-compassion, Tara Brach was also telling a story about that. One of her clients, or one woman she worked with, she couldn't do the self-compassion metta meditation kind of thing, but what she was able to do is in the morning to tell herself, Lisa, I love you. She was able to say that one sentence, and that already made a big difference for her.
For me, this exchange has been very valuable. I'm very happy that we had this. And Jaroslav, I think we can announce that we are going to continue. There was also already the suggestion to have this other evaluation tool, maybe that, especially for companies. And also we have the consent of Michael. Well, the one that Daniela mentioned, it's in the chat. It's the mindfulness at work scale.
Oh, yes, this one.
The Maastricht researcher.
Yes.
We can check that out.
Yes, for the record, I have another one I can show you just very briefly on this topic. Just let me share this. Maybe you have heard about this psychological capital, which is more like a psychological concept, but it's quite common. I think it's actually very useful for the purposes of mindfulness courses effects. It's a concept that has like 4 pillars or 4 main ingredients, and the abbreviation is HERO. Yeah, so the psychological capital, and you can see that you have hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And if you teach MBSR, you see very clearly this all 4 are practically enhanced, and you can even measure it separately. Like self-efficacy was proven that is improving. Sense of hope very often is reported, etc. Resilience, well, we don't have to speak about it. So this concept, there is a let me show. There is quite a literature on this already. So we should probably be aware of it. And I wonder if, for example, we as EAMBA should probably even promote something like that. You know, that we have some measuring instrument that is really relevant for companies. So you could even endorse it or something like that. So that probably some research on that is takes place. Myself, I'm planning actually to use this scale in research. So yeah, that's something for the record, not to forget.
Maybe some of you know, but I would like to repeat that other than this Zoom exchange live, we also have the Google Groups, which that makes the total platform. And on that platform, we have one entry on literature and one on science. Maybe we should awaken that part and then put those resources there. Yes, and Roger already asked Jaroslav whether you can put the link there. Because if you put the link, we will have it in the saved history of the chat. So, thank you.
Okay, so if there is no other no more contributions today, we can wrap it up. So thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure for me as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening. Take care.
Yes.
Take care.
Please check the webpage. Check the webpage because we will have a follow-up with Michael Chaskalsian.
Yeah, looking
and
forward.
it will either be January or February, as we know it now. We are not sure yet. because the program is
I
evolving.
use a book of his, and it's very
Ah.
beneficial. Very beneficial.
Yes. Yes. He's also made an app that is based on one of the books that he co-authored, and that is widely used. So there are also other technological things that we can learn from him.
Oh, in January.
So we don't know yet. We have offered 4 dates to him, and we need to wait. He has already agreed. The only thing we need is to hear the date, and then go. Maybe do you know about the webpage of Exchange? I will put it in the chat, because our whole program is there, and we really have some very interesting experts coming up. So it's simply on the EAMBA webpage under agenda. And there's a special page for Exchange, and it's the most updated page on the whole website.
Wonderful.
So look at it, because we are constantly adding new things, and we are very, very grateful for the experts and speakers that are joining us. So it's very nice. Yeah. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Take care.